Tales of Auntie Grace, the $4 million truth. I can't believe my own daughter could lie so shamelessly, I murmured as I listened to Maria recount everything. I was sitting inside my small log cabin in the mountains of Colorado, where snow blanketed the pines like endless ribbons of silk. This place used to be just a weekend getaway, but now it had become my refuge, the quiet ground where I was rebuilding the next chapter of my life. Everything began 3 weeks ago at my daughter's engagement party, Danielle and Ryan's big night. I had prepared a special gift, a genuine pearl necklace I bought in Paris during my last business trip. I wasn't just any mother. I was once the founder and CEO of a large import-export company, and just a few months earlier I had sold it for $4 million. I arrived at the party with excitement, never imagining it would turn into the most painful night of my life. The moment I stepped into the elegant hall, I felt all eyes on me, not with warmth but with mockery. Ryan made no effort to hide his discomfort, and Danielle, my only daughter, acted like she didn't even know me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was as cold as ice. "I came to celebrate with you, of course. It's your engagement day." Danielle looked me up and down, my simple brown dress, my low heels, my neatly tied hair. She smirked. "This is a high-class event, Mom. Not everyone should show up dressed like that." A few muffled laughs rippled through the crowd. I forced a smile, keeping my composure, and handed her a small gift box. "I just wanted to give you this." Danielle took it without even opening it, then raised her voice for everyone to hear. "Thanks, but next time you should ask before coming. Not every event is for everyone." As I turned to leave, Ryan's mother, Mrs. Harrison, a polished old money type of woman, approached me. "Eleanor, I understand you only want what's best for Danielle, but she's part of our family now. Perhaps it would be wise for you to keep a bit of distance so she can focus on her future." Danielle nodded, agreeing without hesitation. "She's right, Mom. I'm not your little girl anymore. I have my own life now, and honestly, you just embarrass me." In front of more than 40 guests, my daughter erased me from her life. I stood there surrounded by whispers and mocking smiles and simply said, "All right, sweetheart, if that's what you want." That night, I drove back alone to my small apartment in Denver. When I closed the door behind me, I cried, not because of the humiliation, but because I realized that in 70 years of life, I had never truly lived for myself. The next morning, I opened the secret drawer in my desk where I kept all my private financial documents hidden from everyone, even Danielle. Savings accounts, property deeds, stocks, offshore investments, together worth tens of millions. In my daughter's eyes, I was a poor, pitiful old woman. In reality, I was a discreet, self-made businesswoman who had quietly built an investment empire over 4 decades. I called Mr. Jonathan Stone, my attorney. "It's time to activate our plan," I said. He understood immediately. Jonathan was the only person who knew the full extent of my wealth, and had helped me conceal every transaction. The following day, I left Denver with 3 suitcases, a few photos of Danielle as a child, and 1 unsent letter. In it I wrote, "My dear daughter, I've spent my life living for others. Now I choose to live for myself. If I can't find love and respect from you, I'll find it somewhere else." I took my private jet to Colorado, to the cabin hidden among the pine trees and surrounded by snow-capped mountains. I thought I'd feel lonely, but instead I felt free. Snowflake the reckoning begins a week later. Maria, Danielle's housekeeper, called. "Mrs. Eleanor, Miss Danielle is telling everyone that you left because you couldn't handle your financial burden. She says you were her responsibility." I tightened my lips. "Thank you, Maria. Keep watching. Things are just beginning." Outside the window, snowflakes drifted lazily through the air. Inside me, pain had hardened into resolve. Danielle thought she had erased me from her life, but she didn't know she had awakened a mother who would no longer be weak. I was no longer the woman who had been humiliated in front of a crowd. I was a woman who knew her own power, ready to show the world, and my daughter, that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and begin again. "I can't believe my daughter would lie like that," I repeated to myself when Maria, Danielle's former housekeeper, called again. I was sitting by the fireplace watching the snow fall in silence. This cabin, once a simple retreat, had now become a command center, the birthplace of my reckoning. "Miss Danielle told everyone you were broke, living off loans, pretending to be fine until you couldn't anymore. And Ryan? He told his coworkers that his future mother-in-law was a difficult woman who didn't know her place. I clenched my jaw. And Mrs. Harrison, she's throwing a party to celebrate that you're gone. My hands shook with fury. Not only had they publicly humiliated me, but now they were destroying my reputation to make themselves look like the victims. Danielle had turned my departure into her personal victory. That night I called Jonathan. Jonathan, I want you to dig into Ryan and his entire family. I want to know where their money comes from, their debts, their partners, and most importantly, their secrets. Jonathan, an experienced lawyer with connections everywhere, didn't need convincing. I also want you to hire a private investigator, I added. I need photos, videos, recordings, everything. Keep it quiet. They can't know they're being watched. 3 days later, Jonathan called back. Eleanor, I found what you were looking for. Ryan's company is on the verge of bankruptcy. He owes over $3 million, and the bank is about to foreclose. He's been borrowing to keep up appearances. I smiled bitterly. Does Danielle know? Not at all, he replied. He's been lying to her, telling her he's about to close a big investment deal. The truth is, he was counting on your inheritance to save his business. How ironic. The man who once looked down on me for being poor was the one who was actually broke. And my daughter, who called me a burden, was about to marry a fraud drowning in debt. A week later, the private investigator sent me a video that made my heart freeze. Ryan at a luxury restaurant holding hands and kissing a younger woman. The date stamp was after the engagement. I let out a cold laugh. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. Before acting, I decided to test just how cruel my daughter could be. I used an unknown number and pretended to be a social worker. Hello, Miss Danielle. We're trying to locate your mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. There are some important documents for her. Danielle's tone was indifferent. My mother doesn't live here anymore. She left because she couldn't afford her lifestyle. I assume she's in some nursing home. I'm not responsible for her. I pressed on. Is there any way to reach her? It's about an inheritance. Danielle laughed mockingly. Inheritance? My mother never had money. Don't waste your time. And even if she did, she's no longer part of my life. I hung up. Tears welled in my eyes, but alongside them came a cold, steady clarity. My daughter hadn't just cast me aside. She had buried her own decency. From that quiet wooden cabin in Colorado, I began to plan. First, gather more evidence on Ryan. Second, save the affair footage for the perfect moment. Third, return to the city. Not as the humiliated woman they discarded, but as the mother they will never forget. I called Jonathan. Prepare all my financial documents, investment records, and property titles. We'll need them soon, presented publicly. Undeniable. He hesitated. You're planning to reveal everything? I smiled. No, I just want to make sure they pay the highest price for their lesson. For weeks later, Maria called again. Mrs. Eleanor, Miss Danielle is telling everyone that you signed a power of attorney, handed the apartment over because you were so destitute. Now she plans to sell it. I closed my eyes and kept my composure. That apartment is in my name. They dare forge documents? She says you signed before you left so you wouldn't be a burden. I inhaled deeply. Maria, I need you to record everything. Every time they mention me, that fake power of attorney. Every time they mock me, every word. Understand? Yes, ma'am. I called Jonathan. Start the lawsuit when we have enough evidence, but not yet. I want them to dig their own hole first. The detective kept sending more news. Ryan wasn't only bankrupt and unfaithful, he'd been borrowing using Danielle's name, putting her at risk of legal responsibility. For a moment I thought about warning my daughter. After all, she was still my blood. But then I remembered her voice at the engagement party. I don't need you, Mom. You embarrass me. So I stopped. In the 5th week, Maria sent a new recording. In it, Danielle laughed with her friends at the bachelorette party. Thank God my mother won't come to the wedding. She always tries to seem classy with cheap gifts. Pathetic. She's probably out there begging with her cat. The laughter in the recording cut my heart like a knife. That night I cried, and it was the last time I cried for Danielle. At dawn the next day I called Jonathan. Booked the presidential suite at the most luxurious hotel in the city. arrange a private security team and a professional photographer. It's time I return. Are you sure? He asked. I've never been more sure. I called my designer in New York. I need a new look hair, dress, jewelry. I want to appear as the woman they were never sophisticated enough to humiliate. 6 weeks later, while Danielle was busy preparing for the wedding, I finalized every detail of my comeback. The investigator confirmed Ryan planned to bring Danielle to the lawyer's office right after the wedding for her to sign documents transferring all his debts to her name. Jonathan asked, "Are you going to warn her?" I answered coldly, "No. She chose this path. Now she will learn that every action has consequences." That night I wrote 3 letters. One for Danielle, one for Ryan, and one for Mrs. Harrison. Every word was carefully chosen to force each of them to face the truth they had been avoiding. Microphone the press conference 2 days later. A black Mercedes pulled up in front of the Grand Regency Hotel, where I had booked the presidential suite. When the car door opened, I stepped out, my hair cut and styled by Manhattan's top stylist, a sleek red dress hugging my silhouette, a diamond necklace sparkling under the lights. The doorman bowed. The receptionist hurried over, voice deferential. "Welcome, Mrs. Vance. Your presidential suite is ready." I smiled. It was time for Danielle to know what her mother really was. As the private elevator door closed, I saw the curious and admiring looks of the other guests. After 6 weeks in hiding, enduring the pain of a betrayed child, I finally felt like myself again. A strong, powerful, self-possessed woman. That afternoon, exactly according to my meticulously drawn plan, I decided to make my first public appearance. I knew perfectly well the places Danielle, my daughter, and her social circle frequented. First stop, the most exclusive boutique in New York, where Mrs. Harrison, Ryan's mother, regularly shopped. I wanted the woman who called me a burden of the past to know who I really was. I walked into the store like a chilling wind. Immediately, staff approached, recognizing in me the presence of a high-end client. "How may we help you, ma'am?" the manager asked with a practiced smile. "I want to see your most exclusive collection," I replied firmly. "Price is no object." While I browsed dresses that cost thousands of dollars, a familiar voice sounded behind me. "Eleanor." I turned slowly, my lips curling into a calm smile. "Oh, Mrs. Harrison. What a surprise to see you here," she stammered. "But you were gone. Weren't you living?" I cut her off in an icy tone. "In some nursing home or out on the street begging?" Her face flushed. I knew she realized I had heard all the lies they'd been spreading. A sales associate approached with 3 of the priciest gowns in the shop. "Madam, these are our limited pieces. A Valentino at $8,000, a Versace at $10,000, and a Chanel limited edition at $15,000. I didn't blink. "I'll take all 3, and show me your finest jewelry collection." Mrs. Harrison stood frozen while I spent in 5 minutes more than she made in a year. "I can't understand," she muttered. "Danielle said you had no money, living off loans." I smiled and gently tried on a $5,000 diamond necklace. "It seems my daughter never really knew her mother," I said. "And those simple clothes I used to wear? People call that humility, ma'am. Some people want to be loved for who they are, not for what they have." Apparently, I failed to teach that lesson to my own daughter. When the manager returned with a tray of sparkling jewels, I chose a diamond necklace, bracelet, and earrings totaling $35,000. "Perfect. Charge it to my black card." When I pulled out the no-limit credit card, Mrs. Harrison nearly collapsed. "Will you tell Danielle something for me?" I said as I signed. "Tell her that her embarrassing mother is back. And tell her that on her wedding day she will receive a gift she'll never forget." "Will you? Are you going to the wedding?" she asked, trembling. I smirked. "Oh no. The girl was very clear I wasn't welcome, but that doesn't mean I can't send a present." I left the shop, leaving her baffled and frightened. I knew within an hour Danielle would receive the frantic phone call with the whole story, exactly as I intended. That evening, in the presidential suite at the Grand Regency, I called Elias, my loyal financial assistant. "Is everything ready?" "Everything's arranged, ma'am," he replied. "Property deeds, bank statements, audio recordings, investigative photos, everything organized chronologically for maximum impact." "Good. Tomorrow is the wedding. It's time Danielle learned who she's really dealing with. Before sleeping, I called Maria. How are things over there? The whole household is in uproar. Mrs. Harrison ran in shouting that you just spent tens of thousands at the boutique. Danielle is furious. Ryan confused. Nobody understands what's happening. Have they talked about canceling the wedding? Not yet, but they're fighting fiercely. I smiled. Good. The storm has only just begun. The morning of the wedding dawned bright, perfect for my plan. While Danielle was being made up in a luxurious room, I directed every detail from afar like a general before battle. I sent to the church a huge arrangement of white orchids with a card. To my daughter on the most important day of your life, with love from the mother you once called a burden. I knew even those few lines would unnerve Danielle, but that was only the opening act. The dress I chose that day was a black Armani, elegant, powerful, and worth more than my daughter's entire wedding budget. The diamond necklace around my neck sparkled under the lights, ready to reflect the flashes that were about to strike them in the face. At 2 p.m., as the ceremony began, I picked up my phone and called Jonathan. It's time. Start the press conference. Are you sure? He asked. After today there's no going back. I've never been more certain, I replied. It's time the whole city learned the truth about Danielle's so-called perfect family. The press conference took place in the hotel's grand ballroom, exactly at the same time as the wedding. Reporters from all over the city had gathered after hearing rumors of a shocking revelation about the season's most lavish wedding. When I entered, the entire room fell silent. No one immediately recognized me. Eleanor Vance, the woman once pitted as the poor, miserable mother. My name is Eleanor Vance. I began, my voice clear and steady. I'm the mother of Danielle Bennett, the bride who is getting married right now at St. Andrew's Church. I'm here to set the record straight about the lies that have been spread about me. For weeks, my daughter has told everyone that her mother was a penniless woman, so ashamed she had to disappear. But the truth is very different. I am the owner of a private corporation valued at $4 million. A wave of murmurs spread through the room. I held up several folders, property deeds from 3 countries, bank statements, investment certificates, all genuine, all legal. My daughter erased me from her life because she was embarrassed by my modest background. Yet every dime of her tuition, her home, and even today's extravagant wedding was paid for by the company I built over 40 years of relentless work. Jonathan stepped forward, his voice firm. We have evidence that Miss Danielle Bennett attempted to sell a property that didn't belong to her using falsified documents. We also have a recording where she mocks and laughs about her mother disappearing. He pressed play. Danielle's voice echoed through the hall. Thank God she's gone. Pathetic woman. Always trying to act generous with her cheap gifts. Ryan says she's probably begging somewhere by now. A heavy silence fell. I looked straight into the cameras. And Ryan, the perfect groom? He's bankrupt. He's been borrowing millions under my daughter's name. Tomorrow, after the honeymoon, he plans to make Danielle sign papers transferring all his debt to her. Why are you revealing this? One reporter asked. Because a mother can forgive ingratitude, I said. But she cannot stay silent while her child is being destroyed by a man who only sees her as a lifeline. Do you plan to reconcile with your daughter? Another reporter asked. I used to be a nobody, as she called me, I replied. Now she'll have to live with the consequences of erasing the only person who ever loved her unconditionally. At that exact moment my phone rang. It was Maria. Mrs. Vance, the church is chaos. Someone told them about the press conference. Danielle's hysterical. Ryan's pale as a ghost, and guests are leaving to check the news. Did they get married yet? I asked. Yes, but the reception's been cancelled. Danielle wants to speak to you immediately. Good, I said calmly. Tell her where to find me. Before leaving the podium, I delivered my final words, leaving the entire room in silence. To all mothers, love deeply, but never let love become self-destruction. And to the ungrateful children, never forget that the ones who sacrifice their lives for you deserve respect, not humiliation. As I walked out through the flashing lights and thunderous applause, I allowed myself a faint smile. The first phase of my plan was complete. Danielle had wanted a perfect wedding without her embarrassing mother. Now the whole world knew that this so-called embarrassment was the woman who could destroy her fairy tale with nothing but a smile. What Danielle was left with was a shattered wedding, and a scandal that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Ice Cube the final truth. Eleanor Vance, didn't have to wait long for the confrontation. 2 hours after the press conference, Danielle stormed into my presidential suite at the Grand Regency Hotel like a furious storm. She had convinced security that she was my daughter. Unfortunately, she was. She burst in without knocking, still in her white wedding gown. Mascara streaked down her face from tears of rage and humiliation. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed. "You ruined my wedding. You destroyed the most important day of my life." I sat calmly on the sofa holding a cup of tea as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Hello, Danielle," I said coolly. "You look beautiful though a bit unhinged. How was the ceremony?" "Don't play innocent with me," she shouted, stepping closer with clenched fists. "All the guests left. The media is all over it. My reputation is ruined." "How interesting," I replied evenly. "Because just a few weeks ago you said the same thing, that I was ruining your reputation, that I embarrassed you, that you didn't want me in your life." "That's not the same," she protested. "What's different?" I asked, standing up, my tone calm but my eyes burning. "Is it different because when you humiliated me in front of 40 people it was fine, but when I spoke the truth in front of 40 reporters it suddenly became wrong?" Danielle froze, speechless. For the first time in her life, she saw her mother not apologizing, not begging, but standing tall. "But you're my mother," she finally said, as if that excused everything. "You're supposed to protect me, not betray me." "Exactly." I nodded, my voice bitter. "I protected you for 30 years, sacrificed everything from my happiness to my youth, so you could have the best life possible. And you repaid me by throwing me out like trash." "What about the money?" Danielle cried, desperate. "Why didn't you tell me you were rich?" "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am. Not for what I have," I said softly. "I wanted to believe your love was real, not transactional. But it seems I was wrong on both counts." Just then Ryan, her newlywed husband, appeared in the doorway, sweating, pale and trembling. "Mrs. Vance," he stammered. "We need to talk. This is all a big misunderstanding." "Oh, the distinguished groom," I said with icy sarcasm. "The man who told me I wasn't welcome, who suggested I leave so I wouldn't embarrass my own daughter." "You've got it wrong," Ryan stuttered. "I didn't know." "Oh, I believe that," I interrupted. "You didn't know I was wealthy, but you knew you were bankrupt. You knew you had a mistress. And you knew you planned to use my daughter to save your failing company." Ryan went pale as paper. "What are you talking about?" I unlocked my phone and played the video the private investigator had sent me. Ryan passionately kissing a young woman in an upscale restaurant. "Recognize her?" I asked coldly. "According to my investigation, you've been seeing her throughout your entire engagement." Danielle turned to her husband, eyes wide in horror. "Is that true?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan tried to deny it, but I continued. "And here," I said, holding up another folder, "are the documents you plan to make my daughter sign tomorrow. Once she did, she'd be legally responsible for your $5 million debt." "That's not true," Ryan shouted. "Those documents are fake." "Fake," I said with a cold smile.
"Jonathan, come in."
My lawyer walked in carrying a thick stack of documents. "Mr. Ryan," he said sternly, "these papers were obtained directly from the notary's office. Every one of them is authentic and legally certified." Danielle collapsed into a chair, her eyes empty. She finally understood she hadn't just disowned her millionaire mother. She had willingly married a con artist. But I wasn't done yet. "Ryan, tell your wife," I said coldly, "about the loans you took out using her name as collateral, about the apartment you secretly mortgaged behind her back, and about the debt you owe those loan sharks that's due this month." Ryan stayed silent, the kind of silence that confirmed everything. Danielle trembled. "Is it all true?" she whispered. "I can explain." She slapped him hard across the face. "You used me. You lied to me. I married a monster. I looked at my daughter," my voice calm. "You chose to believe him instead of me, Danielle. Every choice comes with a consequence." "Mama," she cried, breaking down. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. When I begged you not to throw me out of your life, what did you say again? You're the past and that's where you should stay. You didn't know I had money. That's exactly the problem, I said quietly. Your love only existed when it came with a bank account. When you thought I was poor, you threw me away. Now that you know I'm rich, you want me back. That's not love, Danielle. That's a transaction. The room fell into silence. For the first time in her life, Danielle was forced to face the real consequences of her arrogance and greed. She had lost her mother, her husband, and her reputation, all because she chose money and status over real love. When Ryan tried to slip toward the door, Jonathan signaled the guards and the police. He was arrested right in the hotel lobby, charged with fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Before being handcuffed, Ryan shouted, "You'll pay for this."
No, he replied coldly.
You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you faced the bill. After he was taken away, Danielle collapsed, trembling. Mom, she sobbed. I know you're angry. I know you want to punish me, but please don't abandon me. I have no one left. You still have Mrs. Harrison, I said dryly. The woman who told me to keep my distance because I wasn't refined enough. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to help the daughter-in-law of a criminal. Danielle lowered her head, ashamed. She's turned her back on me. She said her family can't be associated with me anymore. They banned me from the house. How shocking, I said without a hint of sympathy. Your new family runs the moment things get hard. Unlike your mother, who endured 30 years of ingratitude before finally walking away. At that moment Maria entered, her expression heavy. Miss Danielle, she said softly, Ryan's creditors just came to the house. They took everything, the TV, the computer, even your wedding dress. You signed as guarantor without knowing it. Danielle sank to the floor, her eyes blank. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. I have nothing. No one. I looked at her, my voice no longer angry, just empty. Now you know how I felt when you threw me out of your life. The difference is I was 70 after 30 years of loving you unconditionally. You're 30, and you've just learned that every choice comes with a price. There's no way you'll ever forgive me, Danielle asked, her voice trembling with despair. No way I can win your love back. My love never disappeared, I said quietly, my tone filled with weary sadness. But my respect, my trust, and my willingness to be your victim, those are gone forever. Then what should I do now? She choked out. You'll learn to live on your own, I said, standing and gently closing the notebook on the table. The same way I had to when you shut me out. You'll find a job, pay your own bills, and face the consequences of choosing money and status over real love. But Mom, I'm not your mom anymore, I cut in firmly. You were the one who said, you're no longer part of my life. The mother who sacrificed everything for you without asking for anything in return. She died the day you called her pathetic and threw her out. Now there's only Eleanor Vance, a successful woman who never tolerates disrespect. Danielle left the hotel room in tears, finally realizing she had lost the most precious thing she ever had. A mother's unconditional love. But it was too late. Some wounds never heal, and some words can't be taken back. She had chosen her path, and now she'd have to walk it, no matter how bitter. Sunrise, the new dawn. 6 months later, my life had settled into a peace I'd never known before. From my small mountain villa in Aspen, Colorado, I spent each morning by the window, sipping coffee while watching snow blanket the distant peaks. Everything was perfectly quiet. Only the wind and the birds broke the silence. After 70 years, I was finally living for myself. Maria, my former housekeeper, still visited me once a month. She told me that Danielle was now working as a receptionist at a dental clinic, earning just enough to rent a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. Ryan, the deceitful husband, had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and forgery. Mrs. Harrison, Danielle's mother-in-law, had lost her social standing when people discovered she had helped cover up her son's crimes. Danielle still asks about you every day, Maria said softly. I know, I replied coolly. But that's no longer my concern. She chose her path, and now she must walk it alone. The media continued talking about Danielle's scandal for months, turning it into a nationwide example of filial ingratitude and its consequences. Danielle hadn't just lost her reputation, She'd lost her friends and everything she once took pride in. Jonathan, my lawyer, called me weekly with updates. Ryan appealed the sentence, but it was rejected, he said. He even tried to sue Danielle for emotional damage, but the judge dismissed it as absurd. How pathetic, I said with a faint smile. Even behind bars, he still blames everyone else for his downfall. You've never thought about reaching out to Danielle? Jonathan asked carefully. Elias says she's been trying to send letters to you through the bank. I haven't, I said firmly. That woman died to me the day she called me pathetic. But his question lingered with me for days. Did I miss my daughter? Yes, I missed the little girl who once hugged me after nightmares. The teenager who used to call me her best friend. But the cruel woman who threw her mother out like garbage? No. One afternoon while sorting through old family photos, I found a letter Danielle had written when she was 8. Dear Mom, you're the best mother in the world. When I grow up, I want to be like you, strong, hardworking, and full of love. I love you more than all the stars and the moon together. Tears stained the trembling paper. That night, I wrote in my journal, the little girl who wrote this letter would have defended her mother with all her heart. But that little girl grew into a woman who chose cruelty over compassion. I can't forgive the woman just because I pity the child she once was. That autumn, Elias, my financial advisor, came to visit. Eleanor, he said gently, Danielle wants to see you. She says she's willing to do anything to earn your forgiveness. I let out a cold laugh. Anything? Even turn back time so she never called me pathetic? She's exhausted, Elias said quietly. Thin, frail, crying every day. Fine, I said. Now she knows how it feels to lose a daughter for 6 unbearable weeks of pain that nearly killed me. The first birthday after leaving my country, I spent in Paris. I wandered around the Louvre, buying a few paintings for my newly opened private gallery. I thought about all the years I had put aside my dream of traveling, just to save money for my child. Now at 71, I am an independent, wealthy woman finally living as my true self. One evening Maria called me. Mrs. Vance, she said in a trembling voice. Danielle collapsed at work from exhaustion and stress. The doctors say it's very serious. That's inevitable, I replied coldly. Cruel actions often lead to cruel endings. She says she wishes every day that her mother would forgive her, Maria pleaded. She says she'd rather die than live with this guilt. I once wanted to die too, I whispered. But the difference is I didn't deserve that pain. That night I stood on my hotel balcony watching the glittering lights of Paris, the city of love. How ironic. I had found peace, yet lost the illusion of unconditional love from my daughter. A heavy price, but one she herself set when she chose to humiliate her mother. I wrote the final lines in my memoir. I don't regret adopting her. I don't regret sacrificing 30 years for her happiness. I only regret not realizing sooner kindness should never come at the cost of self-destruction. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional endurance. I closed the book and placed it in the safe. The weak, trampled mother Eleanor was gone. The woman who remained was Eleanor Vance, free, strong, and serene. And after 75 years of life, that at last was enough. 5 years passed. Now at 75, I sit on the balcony of my seaside villa in California, watching the Pacific sunset bathe the horizon in gold. My life, once shaped by sorrow, has blossomed into peace. My art gallery in Los Angeles, has become one of the most prestigious in the country. My wealth has surpassed $50 million. But the greatest treasure is that I've learned to live for myself. When Jonathan, my longtime friend and attorney, visited, he asked, "Do you ever wonder if you had forgiven her earlier, would things have been different?" Every day. I smiled. And every day I know if I had, I'd have died inside. I would have taught my daughter she could hurt her mother without consequence. The last I heard of Danielle was from Maria. She's tried to take her own life twice, Maria said, her voice breaking. She lost her job, her home, and now lives in a cramped little room. She's haunted by guilt. Don't you feel sorry for her? She asked.
I do, he replied.
But pity doesn't erase consequences. I've spent my whole life caring for others except myself. Now it's time to change. One spring afternoon, while sorting through my mail, I found an old envelope set aside. It was from Danielle. I opened it, my heart tightening. The handwriting trembled, the ink smudged. Dear Mom, I know I have no right to write to you after everything I've done. I've lost it all, my husband, my money, my friends, my health, my dignity, but the greatest loss is losing you. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that the little girl who once loved you more than life itself died the day she called you a miserable woman. If you ever want to know what happened to me, look for me in the cemetery. Because the woman who betrayed her mother couldn't live with the weight of her guilt. I love you. Please forgive me. In the next life. I set the letter down, my hands trembling, staring out toward the ocean, where the crimson sunset stretched across the horizon. No more tears fell. Only absolute silence remained. The silence of a mother who had learned that love can forgive, but it can never forget. For the first time in 5 years, true fear gripped me. I immediately called Jonathan, my voice shaking. You must find Danielle right now. I'm afraid she'll do something reckless. You want me to help? He asked, surprised. I stayed quiet for a long moment before replying. Make sure she gets proper psychological care, but don't reveal who's behind it. Everything must remain completely anonymous. That night I couldn't sleep. The letter had awakened something I thought had died long ago. The maternal instinct. Not love for the woman who betrayed me, but compassion for a human being suffering the consequences of her own choices. It was the fragile line between empathy and mercy. 2 days later, Jonathan called back. We found Danielle in time, he said. She's in the hospital after another suicide attempt. She's been moved to a reputable private psychiatric center. All expenses have been covered by an anonymous benefactor, just as you requested. Will she recover? I asked. The doctors are optimistic, Jonathan replied. But they say she'll need years of intensive therapy. Did she ask about me? Yes, he said. When she found out someone was paying her medical bills, she asked if it was her mother. When we said we couldn't disclose that information, she simply replied, it doesn't matter who it is. My mother did enough for me for 30 years. The rest I have to face on my own. Her words pierced my heart. For the first time in years, Danielle showed the maturity and humility I had always hoped for. But it was too late for reconciliation. The wounds ran too deep, and I had built a new life, one with no room for old pain. A year later, Jonathan brought more news. Danielle has been discharged, he said. She's volunteering at a rehabilitation center for people who've lost everything, helping them rebuild their faith and self-worth. I heard she's diligent, compassionate, and especially kind to those who've lost and their families because of their own mistakes. Do you plan to see her again? Jonathan asked one evening over dinner in Los Angeles. I don't know, I answered. She's learned her lesson and I've learned mine. Now we're two different women. The love that once bound us died the day she spoke those cruel words to me. As I wrote the final lines in my journal at 76, I could honestly say I have no regrets. I don't regret loving unconditionally for 30 years. Nor do I regret stopping when that love became a burden that destroyed me. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go forever. Danielle and I now live in two parallel worlds. She is rebuilding her life from the ashes of her mistakes, while I am spending the rest of mine in peace, unburdened by the past. We both learned painful lessons. She learned that words can destroy forever, and I learned that it's never too late to choose to live for myself. A mother's love never truly dies. It simply transforms into another kind of love, one that no longer allows itself to be hurt again. In the end, the greatest lesson I can leave my daughter is this. Even the purest love has limits. And when those limits are crossed, the consequences last forever. And that's the end of today's story. If you were me, what would you do? Would you have the strength to let go? Or would you choose to forgive? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might reach someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to follow for more true life stories about family love and the journey of learning to care for yourself without losing your kindness. See you in the next story. Sometimes we only recognize the value of love and sacrifice when things have drifted too far to turn back. Today's story isn't just about the pain between a mother and daughter. It's a reminder that even the strongest family bond has limits when respect is missing. Because real love cannot exist when one side only knows how to take without cherishing. Have you ever asked yourself if you were in this story? Would you choose forgiveness or walk away to rediscover yourself? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone out there realize what they're losing. And don't forget to follow the channel so we can keep listening, learning to love, appreciate, and grow together through the stories to come.